Hello and welcome to episode 26, Resources and Relationships, Critical Minerals and its Impact on Global Affairs. Today, to take a deep dive into this topic, we have with us Neha Mishra. Hi, Neha, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Omkar. Thank you.
Yes, likewise, we are really glad to have you on the podcast because it's a very as you know the topic tells it itself that it's a very rare occasion that we find experts in this topic, especially, and that too the people who might even provide some perspective on the space affairs as well from this side. So before we take a deep dive into this topic, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself, about your research, and how did you end up in this field as a researcher?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Omkar, for inviting me for this podcast. I am really happy to see that different platforms are right now trying to understand the significance of critical minerals in global affairs, in technology, and now in space as well. So, thank you so much for making this initiative. About me, I'm an associate fellow at the Center for Air Power Studies. I'm doing my PhD from University of Delhi. So my research interest around critical minerals and specifically rare earth elements started past in like 3 years back when the trade war was happening between US and China. And that time it really intrigued me why rare earth was being used a lot. Like there was multiple mentions, so I was very intrigued that how a country can use this type of strategy and just take its leverage over other country without using any geopolitical or action or coercion. So yeah, from since then my research interest has been around variables, developing variables that play a crucial role in national and global energy transition. And in that case, I am focusing on critical minerals, rare earth elements, renewable technologies also, maybe after today, space technology or maybe. So yeah, and how they impact the geopolitical and geo-economic equation between countries. So at CAPS, I have been working on a book project titled as Strategic Use of Rare Earth Elements, Major Powers and Emerging Players. And I have been working around this theme. I have been trying to understand the strategies followed by nations to ensure supply chain resilience of critical minerals and rare earth elements. So yeah, that's about me.
That's quite interesting journey, I would say, because this topic is not so much widely spoken about. And I guess rightly, when you had published few of the articles, I came across your profile and I thought, okay, this is something that I need to cover or possibly get you on the podcast, because even in the space industry, the whole the electronic segment, it actually works on the critical minerals. I mean, if there are no critical minerals, possibly there is no electronics. And the instrument through which we are actually interacting now, it's possible
Yeah,
because of the critical minerals. So I thought,
exactly.
I'll get you on the podcast, because I have never seen, even I listen to several other podcasts, but I have never seen a wide focus on this topic. So yeah, thank you again for agreeing to do this podcast, because as we'll be proceeding ahead, we'll be taking a deep dive into this topic. So in general, we have a audience, not only from space but as well as from defense and security, who work on a strategic and management level. So
Mhm.
this question primarily relates to that segment of the audience, to give them a basic definition of critical minerals. So can you tell us what are critical minerals and why they are I mean, why they have a significant prominence in recent times?
Yeah, so I also believe that the question we should start with because everywhere people just read about it, critical minerals, this or that happens, supply chain crisis, everything, but nobody is very sure what is critical mineral, like how you, why you call it critical mineral. So that's a good way to start with. So for me, like what I have read and in my understanding, the definition of a mineral as critical, it always varies depending on the time and space you are in and you're using that mineral. So it's all a temporal spatial difference. For instance, if we go back in during the World War I, it was US that made the first list of critical minerals that time, and they even termed it as a list of war minerals. They included tin, nickel, platinum, nitrates, and potash that time. So yeah, that time these minerals were critical because that was the need of the hour, that was the need of the time. But today, not the importance is really different. So different countries have different but very similar way of defining critical minerals. So it's all about mineral whose supply is at risk is during the time because of geopolitical scarcity, geopolitical issues, trade policy, or other factors is a critical mineral. So a country which is requiring a mineral for its economic growth, for its defense, for its future goals as well, and facing the supply risk is considering that mineral as critical. So today, if we see, high import dependent countries have been introducing their own list of critical minerals as per their supply risk level. So it's all about the demand and supply right now, you can just ensure a resilience in that. So for instance, if we see rare earth elements and lithium, they are also very important in countries' energy goals and their defense production and everything, and they are focusing in that direction. So in the recent times, these minerals have gained global prominence due to three major factors for me. Geopolitical events that have been happening around these elements. We are seeing that how uh, every day, like some export embargo, some geopolitical crisis happening and everything, then that is also affecting the supply chain. So that's the second factor, supply chain crisis. And yes, the global energy transition, because mostly these minerals are being an increasingly significant part of countries focus and emphasis, because they are trying to focus on their global energy commitment. So yeah, that's how you define critical mineral. There is no such definition of critical mineral which you can take for like 10 years. For instance, if we take the case of rare earth elements, today they are important. Today they have increasing importance and everything. But 10 years down the line, if we will find a substitute, if only if we will find a substitute, we will find a cheaper alternative. Obviously, that time that mineral will be critical. So there you go with the definition of critical minerals. Critical minerals, yeah.
All right. So, can you please name a few critical minerals and how do they impact global relations? The reason I'm asking this question is because at the end, everything boils down to the global politics, the international relationships.
Yeah.
So, just tell us like what are these minerals? Maybe name few of them, and just tell us briefly about like how they impact the global relations.
Yeah, okay. If we see the case of critical minerals, there are like multiple, like more than 50 countries have multiple lists they are going on. So if you will Google it, you will find a full list you will not even understand. But mostly what I feel that uh, I try to understand and analyze all the list and which countries have come up with, and I have found around 16 common critical minerals that found place in all countries concerned right now, because again they are most critical right now for them. So for that, in that part, I found like antimony, beryllium, cobalt, gallium, germanium, graphite, indium, lithium, manganese, rare earth elements, tantalum, titanium, uranium, vanadium, zinc, zirconium. So these are the common ones I found in all the lists. So also there is a thing I want to clarify here, that some people think that rare earth element is a critical mineral, yes, but they think all other minerals are also rare earth elements. For instance, some I have heard people saying that lithium is a rare earth element, nickel is a rare earth element, but no, it's not the case, because a rare earth element is a critical mineral. It's a subset, right? There are like multiple minerals, so rare earth element is also a mineral. And in the part of rare earth element, there are 17 elements we find. So it's a very separate thing, but people are very confused with the fact. So I want to clarify here also, if anybody thinks that nickel is a rare earth element, cobalt is a rare earth element, it's not. So if you go back in your periodic table, there are 17 scandium, promethium, yttrium, europium, and everything. You can go back and understand that too. So it is worth to note that it is not only about the availability of these minerals that makes them critical, but all the technology, because mostly these are available in a very abundant amount, but the technology is the case which makes them critical for countries right now. So their application, as you also mentioned, ranges from different areas: electronic, green technology, defense equipment, and so on. And their impact on global relation, we can obviously go back to the past. They have been impacting the global relation from very long time, because it's all about supply chain has been there since we know the trading, right? And this trading was all about having raw materials. Like we need raw materials for our uh, technology, for our other things, civilian applications also. So this is, but right now they have been impacting mostly high import dependent countries and their relation. Obviously, this goes back to war times, but I won't go back there. But to be recent, you can see the case of Senkaku Diaoyu Island dispute that happened in 2011 between Japan and China, during which China strategically banned the export of rare earth elements to Japan in a response against the geopolitical action by Japan. So there, when I was reading about it, I just noticed that how China just used this strategy in response to the geopolitical action. Although China could use the geopolitics or military actions, but it didn't. So it really affected Japan's automobile industry and also its GDP that year. And since that event, not only Japan, but all the import dependent countries were become more concerned about securing their supply chains, and not only for rare earth elements, but also for other minerals as well. Then the recent US-China trade war that alerted the world more about their reliance on a single country like China for critical minerals. We have seen the impact on semiconductor industry. We have seen the impact on defense industry, pharmaceutical industry, and like permanent magnets, batteries, everything that which we require for our defense, for our other technological growth. Everything is dependent. We kind of had a dependence on a single country. So this has been shaping the global relation right now at bilateral, trilateral, multilateral level. We have seen the initiatives like multilateral quad. We have seen the initiative like Indo-Pacific economic framework, trilateral supply chain resilience among India, Japan, and Australia. There are multiple bilateral partnerships happening between countries like US, Australia, Japan, India, European Union. If we see all these initiatives aiming to reduce dependence on a single country, it's not only about China, it's about any country to reduce the dependence on a single country to avoid their supply chain risk. So right now, this is a race. If we see, not in a race in a form of going somewhere with the strength, it's all about the race towards resilience, towards ensuring that security for the future. So yeah.
All right. So this is a very important point you mentioned, like reducing the dependence on single country, because uh, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're trying to say here is a balance of power is necessary, or a balance of the resources supply is necessary over here, so that one country cannot create a monopoly on something. So just following up on that perspective only. So how does the scarcity or abundance of critical minerals influence the diplomatic relationships between countries?
Yeah, so as I have explained, how supply chain resilience is the focus right now. There is scarcity, there is abundance of these minerals, but obviously the technology is the case which is influencing the diplomatic relation among countries. For me, we can see two forms of diplomatic relations taking shape right now because of the critical mineral, because they want to secure their critical mineral supply chain. First is the partnership among like-minded countries. They are aiming to ensure their resilience. They are trying to follow the strategy of like friend-shoring, reshoring, near-shoring. So friend-shoring is like you're trying to collaborate with a like-minded country in terms of supply chain of critical minerals, so that it will be more about, if we talk in terms of international relation, it will be more about absolute gain, not a relative gain, understanding. So these countries are trying to obviously minimize dependency on China. For instance, we have seen the US-led Ministry Security Partnership Alliance of it has around 15 countries right now. India also joined in March. So, sorry, in June. So yes, we can see that this is a kind of partnership happening at a diplomatic relationship happening in the global scale first. And second form is that involves geo-economic partnership for me, that involves an interdependent engagement between a more economically strong country and a resource-rich country or a region. For instance, if we see the example of China investing in rare earth mines of Madagascar, Myanmar, lithium mines of Zimbabwe, Namibia, cobalt mines of Democratic Republic of Congo, and there are like other examples also. So mostly I have seen China in this case, but yeah, there are other countries. Australia is there, US is there, but this is a form I'm trying to explain, that this is a geo-economic partnership which kind of follows this, that one country is very economically powerful and the other country is not economically powerful, but it is resource based powerful. So you kind of have an interdependent engagement, so that you also benefit, I also benefit, but it's not a win-win game always, because the country with resource rich resource capability always end up with environmental problems. So yeah, so you can see that there these kind of diplomatic relationship is going on. So one is to reduce dependence on China, other form is by China to sustain its dominance. So these two kind of things are happening hand in hand. Yeah.
Yes, I think China has been at the center of everything recently. Even in
Yeah.
the space industry, we have observed like the kind of rapid action plans that have been taking place from the side of China.
Mm-hmm.
It's just huge. I mean, even Europe is unable to match to those levels. So
Yeah. So, Omkar, I just want to highlight this also, that if we see the case of China being a central thing of every
yes,
technology, of either critical minerals or space, this all goes to the credit goes to its strategies. China has been very strategic about its industries, when other countries were even not trying about it. So when if we go back in 1980s, when China started its rare earth industry, it started focusing when US was declining in the sector, and other countries were not even that much focused about it. And today China has all everything happening at one place: processing, mining, production, everything. And at the same time they have very advanced defense and like research and development going on. So you can't match with something which was very strategic in the place, when like planning is all about planning and execution is important, and China is always doing justice to it. So that's where I feel other countries are now entering. We are considering the fact, and we are really entering into this domain. So yes, we can, but this is a like 10 years more or 5 years more kind of journey for us, which China already traveled. So yeah.
yes, very true. I agree with you absolutely because China has always been at the forefront. Like just this is just a little bit off topic, but I would just
Mhm.
like to highlight one more point here is like
Yeah.
the situation in Africa where several of the Western satellite companies, even several Indian companies, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
they were selling satellite services at a much more higher prices, possibly
Yeah.
maybe between 50 to $100. But China came in with the satellite dish equipments of $10 and won the hearts of the people. So
Yeah.
I think communication technology is something that brings people together. I mean, the growth that we are seeing in India at the moment, both digitally and economically. It's because of the communication technology, the advancement in communication technology. And I think China has, captured that backbone of
Yeah.
wherever it has gone. And I believe that's how it is, trying to capture other sectors as well, like the critical minerals. So just, kind of, I would say a little bit adding a layer on China's question. So how has China's dominance in critical mineral production affected its geopolitical standing and relation with other countries?
Yeah. So I explained that the progress of China goes back towards early 1980s and everything. So today we can see that China refines around 93% of gallium, 78% of tungsten, and above like 50% of other critical minerals like graphite, rare earth, germanium, titanium, and everything. So this not goes only to the fact that it has the reserves available. It also goes to the fact that it has strategies, as I explained, it has production technology, it has advancement in technology which other countries still lack. We don't see that if we take the case of rare earth elements, not every country has the processing capacity where like every country is struggling with it. So if we take the case of America, US, and Australia, Australia has good good capacity of reserves and production, but still processing capacity they are working on. They are really struggling, not struggling, but they are working on investing in it. But at the same time, this is really going on. It's a work in progress phase for Australia or USA. But for China, everything is there. So that shows the dominance in that phase, and obviously the numbers also shows that how much uh, capacity it got right now with it, so that like the growth owes to its domestic policy strategies and investment. We have seen that recently China imposed the export embargo of gallium and germanium to US. That showed how China is very confident that these other countries are really dependent on my export, and I can really like China can do it, and other countries will have to struggle for it. So we take the case of in terms of China's geopolitical standing, you are asking. We have seen multiple events that show that China has a strategic use also of these minerals, from the Senkaku Island event I explained to the recent export ban of gallium and germanium. China has been showing its leverage over the world multiple times, that how they are dependent on a single country like China for their sources. But the confidence has been reflecting in their public comments as well, such as of there was a famous statement by Deng Xiaoping in 1992, that he said that if the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. That showed that yeah, if Middle East is strong because of its oil, China is strong because of its rare earths. And even during the trade war with US, the official newspaper of Chinese Communist Party, it stated or wrote that we advise that US side not to underestimate the Chinese side's ability to safeguard the development rights and interests. Don't say we didn't warn you. So this was a clear statement written in its official newspaper, which was showing the confidence China had. But at the same time, the confidence is not very overconfident confidence also, because I have noticed that China has been trying to be very strategic to ensure its supply chain resilience as well. As of October 2021, over one-fifth of all loans given to Africa by Chinese banks, especially to countries with significant natural resources or strategic importance, they are like very high amount, but they are really towards the resource supply chain resilience. So that includes Angola, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, Zambia. All the investments, also the investment I have explained above, like in the lithium and cobalt mines. So we can see that yes, global geopolitical standing is there, yes, but at the same time, it maintains its relation with those countries that are very resource rich. So just to ensure the supply chain resilience, which other countries are also trying with collaboration with each other. But China is trying in a geo-economic way. Yeah.
Interesting. I think you mentioned about Africa, and I believe I already covered from satellite communication perspective. I think mining is the sector which utilizes one of the critical technologies from the satellite sector, that is communications. So I believe the China's footprint is definitely increasing over there. And coming to the latter part, can you highlight the importance of critical minerals in space technology?
Yeah, good question. So, for space technology, so I have been reading about the importance of critical minerals or application of the critical minerals in space technology in defense sector or in aerospace also. So I have seen that mostly they are used in manufacturing of these technologies, and for instance, lithium, nickel, silicon are being used mostly. But all if my focus has been on rare earth, so I will give you more detail about what rare earth elements we use in space and aerospace also. So if we take the case of
Yes.
gallium, they are basically being used for production of computer chips, like also their superconductivity allows these technologies to have longer age. And if we take the case of neodymium and dysprosium and neodymium are the major uh, elements being used by defense sector. They are basically for defense sector. I have seen that they are mostly used for missile guidance system and everything. So these are like this will go more technical in my side, but what I would say that most of these technologies needs permanent magnets, and the permanent magnets require further the critical minerals. And to ensure those permanent magnets, like not only permanent magnets, we need other kind of elements as well, but major key is permanent magnets. So where there I see that yes, critical minerals, especially rare earth elements, are also being used at very high in a very high amount. If we take the case of India, India, like IREL, Indian Rare Earth Limited, it majorly exports or supplies its processed rare earth elements to the defense sector, because that is using high amount of rare earth elements for its defense production. But for other application, we are still lacking in that phase. But you can see that how much importance it is attached to the defense or space technologies. uh, the country like India also doing, because we don't have much processing capacity, but still we are supplying our rare earth elements, our other critical minerals for these technologies. So that's much I know about this area. Not too much I can give you, not too much detail I can give you about this. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So, in general, like you mentioned about India in
Hmm.
between the lines. So, how does India's increasing reliance on critical minerals have impacted its global position in international relations?
Mm-hmm. So in India, the focus on critical minerals in terms of their exploration, management, everything, it started again back in 2011 when this Senkaku Island issue happened. But yes, India has a long history being a land of multiple resources. If you will allow me, I can go back in the history and explain some few parts of it, if it's fine.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. So, like, how our colonial history and economic issues have always slowed our progress in this direction. But if there is a thing that India was among the major, reserves of these high critical minerals in 1950s. Like, there were three major countries that got the focus of world having high amount of monazite, and like that includes rare earth minerals elements, which had Brazil, which had India as well. But with the time of with the British history, with the colonial history, we kind of disappeared in the whole thing. So if the we can take the case of rare earth industry, when the monazite capacity was really being considered throughout the world, in India, the princely state of Travancore, it was highlighted and received global attention because during that time, it had a high amount of monazite available. And this goes back to 1908 when a German scientist in India Herscomber, he identified the presence of monazite in sand minerals. In sand minerals, he just noticed that in the coil of contaminants, it kind of had some amount of monazite. It was being imported from Kerala. He was very smart enough to separate it from the coil and make it happen that yes, India has monazite, and he established the first separation plant of monazite in India, in Kerala, that was called as Manvala Kurichi in the erstwhile princely state of Travancore. But the history of our colonial history really affected this progress, because when British uh, under got to know, he charged him as spy, and he obviously the whole arrangement took over by Britishers. They got the London Cosmopolitan Mineral Company took over. Then everything got under their control. Even after the Second World War, when India got independence, we realized everything that we have deep sand minerals, we have critical minerals which are important to achieve our nuclear self-sufficiency, all thanks to Dr. Homi Baba. But the attention was on India that time, the Travancore, because of the war mineral attachment. And yeah, but as a whole, India really struggled to keep the best use of its own resources. Even that time, how much intervention was being happening, and we had no money, we were struggling with our obviously the economic food security and everything. So we could not focus on too much on our resources and advancement. And obviously the strategic use was the race was going on, and we took like we were very behind. So I won't go in much detail. It is a podcast not about India's then. It is a podcast in itself. So if you want to read more about it, I can give. This is a chapter by me on rare earth elements and India's neighborhood. So coming back to your question, the domestic consumption of rare earth elements in India has been increasing in the past 2 decades, and since the liberalization of our economy and increasing the engagement in the world as well. We are trying to increase our engagement. Why? Because we want to ensure the security of the supply. Because it's not only about we don't have exporting capacity as such right now. We are just importing. So for our domestic use, we need countries with like-minded strategies and everything to those who can invest in our uh, those who can just give us some planning and everything. We are trying to coordinate. We need to work more in this direction. There are developments going on. Countries are working. India is working. There are policies coming, but it's all about policy and execution. But if you are good in policy but execution is very slow and very poor, you cannot cope up, you cannot match the growth of the world. So as we can see that yes, we just got the critical mineral list out. So we think, I think maybe we can have some more diplomatic connections. Right now we have with Australia, with US, with Japan, but the execution is still under progress. Yeah. So all this, I would just try to explain that yes, India's geopolitical position is there in the global in terms of critical minerals. Why? Because countries have been understanding the India's potential in the history as well, because they were interested in India. But recently, India has been more deprived of the technology, which can come up with the diplomatic engagement. If we can see the recent MSP Mineral Security Partnership Alliance, India got the membership because last year when it was launched, India was not offered a membership that time, and it was a very thing of debate among countries. But then realized if India got it, because yes, no country can just lose the good reserve country. Obviously, we don't have much technology, but we have good reserves. We have untapped reserves. So there we can see yes, our geopolitical standing is very strong, but we need to focus on the strategies. Yeah.
All right, that's a quite an extensive answer, and I believe you gave a really good, insightful nuggets because even I was not aware about the German scientist that you mentioned about that
Yeah.
incident. Definitely, it would be really great if you can forward after this podcast a link, and so that I can possibly get your chapter, or the complete link to the book itself, so that people
Mhm.
can possibly purchase it, or read it, or access it through their library cards and all. So if you have the link of the book, if it is already published,
Yes,
then you can
yes.
send me. If it is going to be published also, then you can send me later on also, because generally a lot of people try to ask me after the podcast, we were listening to this point, can you send us a reference to this? So
Yeah,
generally, I
yeah.
think, as you mentioned, this is a very important point that you just discussed, and it will be really great if we can put up the link to the your chapter, especially
Yeah.
in the
Yes,
description
it is.
section.
Yeah, it is already published, so I will forward it if anybody wants to know more about it. It's all about India's history and in rare earth elements and the recent times also. So it's good to know, like if you will like it, you will obviously get more information.
Definitely, yes. And what are the implication of India's domestic production capabilities for critical minerals? I mean, uh, from self-sufficiency perspective also, but leveraging these resources in a diplomatic way for international relations purposes.
Yeah. So as I have explained more about India's past and everything, so production capabilities, if we see, are not very much with India right now. Because if we talk about self-sufficiency, India came up with too many like policies that we want to be Atmanirbhar in manufacturing, we want to Atmanirbhar
Yes.
in this or that, right? But the self-sufficiency requirement cannot be done unless you don't have good production capabilities. We are still lacking with that technology. We are still working in that direction. So I would really say that yes, India has leverage in that phase, but diplomatic leverage for India is still there. Why? Because we have the reserves. Because in a world where reserves are really declining, if we take the case of China, China started with 90% of reserves in 1980s. Now it has some 69 or 70%. So you can see that reserves are declining because obviously you are using them, you are exporting them, you're exploiting all the available resources. They will be declining. But in India, we obviously we didn't go too much in the production. We didn't try to explore too much, so there we have a lot of reserves available. Untapped reserves we don't even know how much reserves we have. The Geological Survey of India is now working in that direction. If we have seen in the past 6 months, we have seen how lithium reserves were found in Jammu and Kashmir. Some reserves were found in Andhra Pradesh. So there are that things are going on. So we can see that yes, we have reserves which are not even listed in the factual tables or everything.
All right. So after having this wide range of perspective, I'd like to know from the point of West how we look at the critical elements, or the uh, I would say in general the geopolitics of the critical minerals,
Mm-hmm.
because this has been a kind of a issue
Mm-hmm.
where we have seen a lot of Western nations are not really good nation building countries. For example, the United States. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there are examples of Iraq, then of course Syria as well, then Vietnam. So somewhere the Western nations, or the Western sphere, has almost failed at several points in the history to build a nation. So from your perspective, what role the West will play in the geopolitics of critical minerals, and how it will affect India?
Yeah. So you're right that West has been playing a role like this in Vietnam or in Iraq and every places. But these are the cases of some other geopolitical aspects. If we take the case of energy or energy transition, the behavior or the approach of US or West is very different, right? Because in the past we have seen when the oil crisis happened, after that US had to suffer a lot. Other Western countries that were dependent on in Middle East, they were also suffering a lot. But what the approach was of especially of USA, it was to shift towards alternative, which the US did. It came up with its very good amount of shale gas, and it tried to, lose the dependence on Middle East. So this was the case, and if you see, there are multiple cases where energy agreements or energy partnership or energy kind of interaction has been happening, and the behavior of US is kind of very different there too. If you take the case of Chabar, India and Middle East, India and Iran were interacting when US implemented its again the JCPOA, it withdrew from JCPOA again. So this was a case when it affected uh, like USA didn't approach the whole situation of India and Iran the same way it used to do in the past, because it was about energy again. So and if we take the case of critical minerals again, yes, critical in case of critical minerals, USA has been approaching the whole thing differently. In the past, in 2017, Quad re re-established and everything, and they had the major topic to focus or concern about was critical minerals. They have been focusing on supply chain resilience, they have been focusing on other aspects. So just to say that this has been affecting the geopolitical dynamics, but not in a way of competition as such. It is more in terms of, as I explained also before, that it is more in terms of reducing the dependence. It is more about having the resilience, not having a competition or geopolitics around it. So and that's the same happening with India also. India is not trying to engage in a competition as such right now. It is more focusing on securing its supplies. So yeah, this is what I feel.
All right, yeah. So I believe so. The role of the West and in general all the developed nations is pretty much different than what it is in other verticals of the energy sector. So that's good to know. I mean, uh, nevertheless, we still see China, creating a dominance. I mean, it's a history through several, I think, movements that we have seen recently in the Pacific, that China uses its dominance, as you said, like we have to reduce the dependence on one nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, the creation of monopoly is always a kind of a threat in
Yes.
any economy. So I believe critical minerals is yet to kind of shed off that monopoly because, of course, China has a lot of reserves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe we are now reaching the end of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to, because the last question is for the students, so I'd like to, step in and ask the question only dedicated to the students, because I have made it a habit that until we are discussing about all the geopolitics and the expert level research, it's fine, but we also need to kind of prioritize students as well, because there is a lot of students who get in touch with me and ask me the questions, and I'm, of course, as I'm not an expert in every field, so it is kind of tough for me to guide them. So what I
Yeah.
do is, like, ask the expert itself the question, like, what message would you like to give to the generations, so
Mm-hmm.
from that perspective, Neha, what
Yeah.
message would you like to give to the future generations stepping into this field of research related
Mm-hmm.
to geopolitics of critical minerals? I mean, it's not only necessary from geopolitics. If you're aware about the
Mm-hmm.
scientific side as well, then please feel free to tell that as well. Like, as per your comfort, you can just give, like, few guidelines on how students can actually, take up this research and possibly amplify
Mm-hmm.
or increase their contribution in this field.
Yeah. So for me, this is more like an emerging field right now among researchers who belongs to social sciences and international relations, and mostly the focus is around geopolitics of critical minerals, rare earth elements, lithium, and everything. But at the same time, it's not only about geopolitics, as you also said that it's not we cannot be very narrowed down in our approach when we are trying to build our career in that phase. So for the researchers who will be is coming into who will be stepping into this direction of research, I would suggest them that always try to be very clear with your concepts first. Just make it a habit to work on your basics first, because when I started 3 years back, it was obviously I'm not having a background from science. I was not very sure how to work around rare earth elements without having that much knowledge around it. So first I try to, even without not having too much interest in science, I really worked on understanding what rare earth elements are and what their use are, so that I can be more conceptual clear about the concept. Then I should focus on the other aspects around it. So that's what I would suggest. If you are trying to enter into this domain, first make it a habit to just be clear about your concepts first, and then second is I suggest that this is my uh, kind of mantra, where in the past 3 years, that always I read one article a day. So it's like a more academic suggestion also. When you are in academic background, always make it a habit, don't sleep without reading one article. So that's what I do, like at least read one something related to your field, and make it a habit to go to your libraries and connect with it. So this is the time for more interdisciplinary research, not a very narrowed down international research, or social sciences or sciences. Everything is very interconnected. So when you are trying to understand geopolitics around it, try to understand other dynamics around it as well, how it is affecting the energy transition, how it is affecting the domestic policies as well. So everything is connected when you will be understanding it, and then you will come up with new ideas as well. So if you are restricting yourself to one thing, that yes, this is what I know and I will continue with this, obviously you can't you cannot go further than that. So that's my suggestion for people who want to work. And then always start with some basic book also. Make it a habit to work on start with books, not some journal articles, or like you just find on Google. When you are just googling that, yeah, what is geopolitics of critical minerals, you will find multiple articles, but they are like just small analysis. But make it a habit to go beyond that. Just start with good basic books which can develop your core understanding, and then you can always read these articles that will be just adding to your information and existing knowledge. So this is what I would suggest. Whoever wants to join or go into this domain always should follow this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. I hope the students take away a lot of key aspect from this guidelines, and I hope to see a lot more researchers in this field, because I myself have been researching and searching for a lot of experts, but thankfully your name popped up in that
Yeah.
while I was searching a lot. So I hope to see a lot more, researchers contributing in this field, because it's very important. I mean, we talk about several aspects in the electronics, AI as well, but I believe the systems itself, the hardware system itself, it's not possible without the critical minerals.
Yeah.
So it's very important to, put a spotlight on this subject. So thank you very much, Neha. It was great to have you on the podcast, and I believe
Mm.
maybe we can record some follow-up episodes in the future, because there have been a lot of several
Yeah.
historical contexts as well
Exactly.
that you brought up. Especially the German scientist thing is very much surprising for me.
Mhm.
I had never heard about it, so definitely we
Yeah.
will try to record some follow-up episodes in the future. Thank you very
Thank
much again.
thank you so much for putting up this topic for your podcast, and I really hope that people will think about it. People will be interested, and people will start
Yes.
doing research around it. So hoping for the best, and thank you so much, Omkar.